Can I confirm that we're online? We are. Thank you very much. Right, first item on the agenda is apologies, and I believe there aren't any, although I know Aidan's not terribly well today. He will be coming in online if we need any support for Gary, I think. Minutes of the meeting. Can I just remind anybody who's got mobiles, can you put them on mute or turn them off, please? And also, if you are, when you do speak, can you speak into the microphone because they are a bit directional? That'll be really helpful. It helps the people that are watching. So minutes of the meeting of the 20th of June, can I sign those as a true record? Members in the chamber agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Anybody got any declarations of interest? I'll take silence as no. Public participation. There are no public questions this morning. Questions from members. There is one question from Councillor Jill Taylor from Weymouth. And I think Jill is coming in remotely for family reasons. Jill, are you around?
Yes, good morning, Spencer.
Good morning. So you'd like to ask your question then?
Yes, I would. I'm not going to read out the preamble because I'm sure everybody has read it. It's just really a question around vaping and young children. Because it is illegal to sell vapes to an under 18-year-old, I'm just asking how much enforcement work our Trading Standards Department have done on vaping in shops, selling in shops. I am very well aware that our Trading Standards are a brilliant team and they do a lot of fantastic work. And this is really about the balance of the work they are doing, if they picked up on this. And my second question is about asking for some more awareness raising with young children, and it would need to be young person specific, because there's absolutely no point telling a teenager not to vape, because that's the easiest way to make them vape. But these are the questions I would like answered, please. I couldn't find any data for Dorset. There are a lot of national data available, which is what I based this question on. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Jill. Byron Quayle is going to respond to your questions.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Taylor, for your question. I'll respond to both questions that you've asked this morning, and this will be supplied to you, obviously, in writing as well. So, a response from question one. Dorset Council Trading Standards Service has carried out test purchasing with underage volunteers for a number of years, targeting alcohol and tobacco sales. In response to the rise in concerns about the sale of disposable vapes for children, a test purchase exercise was conducted in January 22. 11 premises were tested, 4 of which sold to the under 15-year-old volunteer. One of the sales was of 0% nicotine vape, which was not an offence. The other 3 were dealt with by way of advice and simple cautions. From January 22 to date, officers have visited 32 retailers selling vapes. Advice on preventing sales to children was given, and a guidance note detailing the law relating to vapes and the prevention of underage sales of vapes left. 8 seizures of legally non-compliant vapes were made during these visits. Since January 22, Trading Standards has seized 3,470 legally non-compliant vapes from 9 premises, removing them from the supply chain. Trading Standards is currently working with Dorset Schools, the Youth Service, and Dorset Police to drive down the sales of vapes to children and legally non-compliant vapes. In response to question 2, there's a bit here, so please bear with me. Public Health Dorset does not currently have plans for an awareness campaign on the dangers of vaping. This is partly because we do not yet know enough about the dangers, and any campaign would have to be carefully designed with a clear call to action. Simply asking children not to vape is unlikely to be effective without knowing more about these behaviours and underlying reasons behind vape use. However, We do work with local schools at their request and have delivered some behaviour change workshops around vaping in schools. These aim to provide information on vaping from the latest hash survey and hash responses, but mostly focus on helping schools to understand the issue they are experiencing. Vaping during school hours and selling of vapes in schools, and helping them to break down their problem, to think about what could be done to address these issues. Members may also be aware that the government has recently announced plans to clamp down on the use of vapes by children, and as it renews focus on how to address the rise in vaping amongst young people. As part of this plan, the government has endorsed the inclusion of education on vaping to be included in PSHE lessons. The National Survey of Drinking and Drug Use in School-aged Children is about to be launched and is seeking participation from our schools. The survey will ask about vaping and schools can use the anonymous data on vaping, especially to tackle the rise of vaping amongst their own pupils. Public Health Dorset and Dorset Council's Children's Services are raising awareness of the survey and asking schools to take part, and this is very important, so we can get better understanding of the data on use. The Chief Medical Officer for England, Professor Sir Chris Whitty, sets out a clear position on vaping, which Public Health Dorset supports. And to quote, the key points about vaping e-cigarettes can be easily summarized. If you smoke, vaping is safer. If you don't smoke, don't vape. Marketing vapes to children is utterly unacceptable. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Byron. Jill, do you want to come back? Anything you want to say?
Yes, I would like to. Can I ask that when this survey has been completed, that it goes to health and wellbeing for consideration, please? Because I think this is something within Dorset that we do really need to keep a bit of a tab on, and it's a growing problem.
Okay, Jill, thank you very much. Right, we'll move on now to agenda item 6, which is...
Sorry, could I have an answer on that one, please? I've just asked a question.
the difficulty is I can't really hear what you're saying. Hang on a sec. Yeah, we'll take it to health and wellbeing. That's fine.
Okay.
I sort of
Thank
took
you
it
very
as
much.
read, but I couldn't quite hear everything. Thank you very much.
Okay, I do apologise. Thank you very much.
No, that's all right. Right, agenda item 6 then, the forward plan. You've all had a chance to have a look at it. It's only here for reference. Everybody content with it? I'll take silence as a yes. We'll move on to agenda item 7 now, which is the first quarter financial management report. I'll hand over to Councillor Gary Suttle.
Strange, isn't it? Because the chairs always flip back, and of course this doesn't. Right, good morning, Gary Suttle, Finance Portfolio Holder. I present the Q1 Financial Management Report. In line with last year and back before, I report that at this moment in time, we anticipate a budget deficit. Seems a bit of a recurring theme. For those who tell me that finance do this on purpose, to worry people, and then, towards the end, make it all right. A sort of B-movie type script. But nothing really could be further from the truth. What we're actually reporting is a significant difference between the agreed budget and the actual income and expenditure at this stage of the year. Time does not heal the budget. It's not an illness that you can recover from. What changes is hard work and constant monitoring over the period, changing some priorities for others, saving where possible, and spending hours of every week attempting to recover the position as the year progresses. The forecast itself is at item 9.6 of the report, and you can see that we anticipate a variance of 10.247 million. The report outlines the issues encountered during the first 3 months of the year. Place standing out as the director of the most pressures is shown in 9.27 of the report. All the matters that we're concentrating on. Dorset Travel in particular is of concern, as we still believe there may be more to come in respect of costs. Between items 9.27 and 9.38, you will see the detail, and you'll also see that this is not one issue or problem. It's numerous, and the work required by Finance and the Directorate is significant. Last year, I was asked if I'd make budget changes, and I'll give the same answer. No, I will not be making changes to a budget until I've seen the half-year results, which will give greater information and give more accurate predictions. Let's not avoid the fact that this is a very difficult year, not just for us, but for all. Rising interest rates give rise to greater pressures on external contractors, and inflation has failed to come down as predicted, or at least as fast as predicted. We still have a pay award to agree as well. The report gives a number of indicators that we need to heed, in particular the progress against budgeted savings. 5.3 million of these are rated at amber at present, and these must be delivered in year, and they are a challenge. In this year, we have a contingency of 8.6 million, and at present, I believe that this will be utilised in full, and on current predictions may not be sufficient. As I say, it's a very difficult year to predict. The report also includes the capital programme. As we've seen, we're aware that there is some slippage, and in the past, we continue to monitor current spend and any further slippage that may occur. If necessary, repurposing the underspend in year. I will not shy away from the fact that this budget is under pressure, and there is considerable work to do over the coming months. As ever, we will continue to report the projected outcomes in future Cabinet meetings. The recommendations are to note, they're in 1 and 2 of the front page of the report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll get there in a minute. Thank you, Gary. Jill, can I have a seconder, please?
Thank you very much, Leader. Yes, Jill Haynes. I have a portfolio for corporate development and transformation. I'm pleased to second the proposal.
Before I open the Cabinet debate, any comments from colleagues in the chamber? John Andrews.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Mine was just related on page 36 about council tax arrears. And how that would have well, not only that, but business rates arrears, and how that would reflect on our budget if we didn't start to increase the rate in which we're clawing that back. So I just wonder how we're getting on with it, and is it a true reflection of what's going on as what's gone on in the previous years?
Thanks for the question, John. The business rates are actually improving, and we anticipate that in this year we will have slightly greater surplus than we anticipated. There are issues with debt within the council, which I'm sure you've seen in the report. However, we're trying to tackle that as fast as possible. Majority of that actually is in adults. And if you consider the size of the authority, we are bound to have, if you like, almost a trading debt month on month. So when it's reported, sometimes it looks quite bad, but in the context of the overall budget, it's not.
Anybody else? Can't see anyone else. Right, Cabinet colleagues, this recommendation is to note, it's been proposed and seconded. Anybody else got a comment to make? If not, we accept this. First quarter, early days. So I'm going to read the words out to the benefit of those that watch our meetings online. Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations set in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. So now move on to agenda item 8, Ofsted focused visit to care leavers service. And I'm going to hand over to Councillor Byron Coyle.
Thank you, Leader. Morning, everyone. Councillor Byron Quayle, Cabinet Member, responsible for children education, skills and early help. Leader, I'm very happy to move this report, as it asks Cabinet to note Ofsted's findings from the inspection visit. Also attached as appendices are the service action plan and the letter from Ofsted. Speaking to the report, Ofsted visited our care leaver service in May to undertake a focused inspection visit of services for care leavers aged 16 to 17. As a point to note, Ofsted's findings were very, very positive. And to quote Ofsted, and I want to get this right, leaders have significantly strengthened support and services for our care leavers and have made notable improvements in the quality and standard of their accommodation. And this was an area of development from our last main inspection. I am delighted that Ofsted have found many strengths in the service and significant improvement in several areas from their last inspection, Leader. While there are many examples in the letter, it is worth noting that they were particularly impressed by our partnership work, both within council, within directorates, and with external agencies. And as we know, that is vitally important to this type of work. And I'm incredibly proud of officers. They were also very impressed by our improved accommodation offer for care leavers and with the services we have developed to protect young people from exploitation, which is absolutely a priority. And again, I'm very proud. Overall, Ofsted found that the council has a strong offer for our care leavers, and this continues to grow and develop, and is absolutely a priority for this council. I would like to pay particular attention and give thanks to the work of the Care Leaver Delivery Group, which has led the improvement work, and at the time was chaired by Councillor Andrew Kirby, who was the lead member for safeguarding. However, I would also like to mention Councillor Andrew Parry, my predecessor, who has led a lot of this work as the portfolio holder. And of course, without all the fantastic work of our officers and staff who work with our care leavers, who have delivered such a fantastic result. And it seems somewhat unfair that after all their hard work, I come in at the last minute to present this report. But I'm quite grateful because it's a fantastic news for Dorset. With regards to the areas of improvement, and there were, the service has addressed this in the action plan included in the pack. So, Leader, I would therefore like to move this report and happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Byron. Can I just get a seconder, please? Andrew Parry, thank you very much, Andrew. Colleagues around the chamber, anybody wish to comment? Paul Kimber from Portland.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for this report. And I'm pleased you talked about the quality of service and the Ofsted reports. My question is quite easy, really. I know for particular young people in care, the older they get and the more difficult it is for accommodation. Are you able to give any reports on accommodation? Have we got enough, and are we still looking as much as possible throughout the county for homes? Thank you.
Not such a simple question, I guess. Thank you, Councillor Kimber from Portland. The simple answer is yes, we are always looking. We're always working for our care leavers. Yes, things are tough as they get older, as you point out, but absolutely that's a priority. There are specific instances that you'd like to raise with the service, please do so, and officers will take that up.
Thank you, Byron. Anyone else? If not, I'll go back to the fact with this report's for noting. It's been proposed and seconded. Any member of the Cabinet wish to comment? Andrew.
Thank you. Byron was generous enough to refer to me in my previous role and other officers that, of course, supported me in that work. But I just want to take a moment for Council to reflect and Cabinet to reflect on the whole, how much we have done as corporate parents in a relatively short period of time, and our absolute commitment and ambition to children and young people across Dorset who are in our care and beyond. And whether that's the work of the virtual school in helping guide them through the educational process and the numbers that are now going on to further education, or the young person I met who was one of the new people. In fact, I didn't get to meet them, I have to say, for the very good reason that whilst we'd settled them in their new housing provision in Weymouth, they were out working. What a fantastic result. They had gone from being unemployed in an unsettled place to being in secured accommodation and out working and enjoying themselves. That is a fantastic result for us to achieve as a council. I also reflect on things like our absolute commitment to our children in care and those exiting care, but beyond. It shouldn't be a case of now you're 18, you're on your own. It's a case of now you're 18, there's a big world out there. Let us help you make the most of those opportunities. And I know that the Care Leaver team are steadfastly behind our young people and helping them achieve those dreams and ambitions, whether they are here in Dorset
or further afield. We wish them well. I have every inkling that although I may have moved directorates, I suspect my former officers and colleagues in that directorate will continue to press me on supporting housing provision for children and young people wherever possible.
Right. Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. We now move on to agenda item 9, Adult Social Care Re-enabling Centre, Bed-Based Care, it says here. Jane Somper.
Thank you very much, Leader. Can you hear me? Yes? Okay, thank you. So I'm very happy to introduce this report that sets out the progress of this Reablement Centre project and seeking approval to commence work on the design of the first centre, which is going to be located in Dorchester. At the Cabinet meeting in July, delegated authority was given to the Executive Director of People, Adults and Housing and the Executive Director of Corporate Development in consultation with the appropriate portfolio holders and the Executive Director Place to initiate a project to develop up to 3 80-bed reablement centres in the Dorset Council area at an estimated cost of around 80 million over the next 10 years. Review sites in the Council's property portfolio against the site criteria for the centre and prioritise allocation of a site to the project. Since that decision in July, Adult Social Care, supported by experienced external advisors, have worked closely with corporate finance, procurement, legal and property colleagues to identify a site and prepare for the design and the construction of the centre. The proposal is for an 80-bed centre at Damers Road, Bridport Road in Dorchester. This site, owned by the NHS, is adjacent to Dorset County Hospital, where the majority of demand for reablement comes from. We've been working in partnership with Dorset County Hospital NHS Foundation Trust and NHS Dorset to drive this forward, and I'm really pleased to report that discussions have been extremely positive. This report asks delegated authority to finalise these negotiations, to secure the site, procure a design partner and commence the design phase. This will be an important step as it will help us to finalise the proposed capital spend required to build the centre, which at present is estimated to be at around £30 million. The centre will be for Dorset Council residents who require intensive, integrated care and rehabilitation after an illness, a fall or a stay in hospital. The centre will be for all Dorset Council residents who require recovery and rehabilitation services, with the primary aim of the centre to enable people to return to their own home or place of residence. Thank you for considering this. I'm now going to hand over to John Price, who will go through this report and these slides. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Somper. Okay, we've got a brief slide deck just to run through some of the detail. This is quite a big piece of work, so just a reminder of the recommendations that we're asking for consideration today. If I could have the next slide, please, Sam. So a little bit of background, as Jane's talked through, this has been a piece of work that we've progressed over the last 12 months, but at the heart of the work really is the objectives to improve recovery and rehabilitation services for people after illness or a stay in hospital, to help the council have greater control over the availability and quality of care, and improve the recruitment and retention of care and nursing staff. So the reablement centres will reduce the pressure on council's finances from an adult social care perspective by helping us manage demand coming through from that hospital pathway, ensure that Dorset has sufficient care services to meet future demand in this area. We are an ageing population, and the demand forecasts are significant. Help reduce some of the pressure on NHS beds and give us an option around preventing admission to hospitals and improve the outcomes for Dorset Council residents who are discharged. So there's very much at the centre of the work. As Jane said, over the last 12 months, we've progressed a huge amount of work. Significantly, we brought Care Dorset into operation in October 22, so it's a successful creation of that business. And very quickly on opening that business, we were able to start a similar service, providing reablement beds in partnership with our health colleagues, using discharge money from last year. So we actually were able to pilot this service in December, and we have 30 beds open through Care Dorset at the moment, which are proving very successful in helping people home from hospital. Through December, we continued some significant discussions across the estate with our place colleagues. Public Intelligence were commissioned to review the approach to assets and actually held this business case up as an exemplar, recommended that it be prioritised through the capital programme. We reviewed many different sites across this area, looking at the first site for Dorchester, and revised the business case when we highlighted our preferred site, which would see us partner with the NHS. So en route here, we've done significant briefings across Cabinet, and just a little reminder of some of the challenges that we face in Dorset. So demand drivers are significant. 1,800 people discharged from hospital into council services last year. So significant demand coming through, and certainly in terms of our ageing population, we are seeing and expecting increases significantly over 65 and over 85 in the years to come. The reablement centre design that we're requesting to progress today really looks at a site which will be potentially 80 beds. So the preferred site in partnership with the NHS should be able to accommodate 80 beds en suite. A number of those beds will be ring-fenced for bariatric and high acuity, and the homes will operate a household model. So they're sort of therapeutically designed to give people the maximum opportunity to recover while staying there. So communal facilities are prioritised, including lounge, dining, kitchen, but also rehab areas to allow people to regain their skills prior to returning home. Treatment areas, clinical areas, balconies, and family areas will all be part of that design. Just to just to give an idea of the sort of work that went into this, the site appraisal looked at a number of sites across Dorchester and Dorset, and ranked those. Quite clearly, you can see at the top here the Dorchester site, which really is our prime site. Currently, we have around 80% of all demand from hospital coming from that area. Highlighted Damers Road, which is an NHS site. So we've progressed discussions on that site. Next slide, Sam. And I'm really pleased to say that the NHS have been overwhelmingly supportive of this, and we've had many discussions where they are supporting us to develop the design on this site at Damers Road. Next slide. There's a little mock-up of what the design would look like, and a bit more detail. As I say, the site's design is very important. It isn't a traditional care home. It isn't a hospital. It has the therapeutic sort of design at its heart. So there is a lot more open space, and as you can see here, quite a lot of consideration given to the sort of surroundings and soundproofing that would be required. Next slide, please, Sam. Another key work stream of this project has been the finances, and here we detail how those finances stack up. We've worked extensively with our colleagues in finance here and with the support of consultants to model this. But what we're able to do is finance the cost of this build, around 30 million, through the savings and the repayment of the capital through rent on the site, and we're proposing that our care company, Care Dorset, run this site. Okay, that's the final slide. So just back to the recommendations for consideration today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful. Thank you very much. Right. Jane, any more to say? No, I'll seek a seconder first. Simon Gibson.
Thank you, Leader. Brilliant example of collaboration, especially with our health partners. I'm delighted to second.
Totally agree. Comments from anyone in the chamber? Paul Kimber from Portland.
Thank you, Chair, and I absolutely commend this report. But however, I do want to say one little thing. We've got an empty hospital in Portland. Was there any consideration given over to that empty hospital with lots of land around it? I wonder if Councillor Stommer could give us any thoughts on that area. But absolutely welcome it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Paul. Appreciate your comments. Jane?
Yes, thank you very much. Really, the answer is quite simple. It's just the demand is based around Dorchester, and that is why that site is the preferred site. Nothing against the community hospital in Portland, but it is the preferred site because of that demand. And obviously people coming out of hospital directly, mostly the significant demand comes from that hospital.
So basically provision is being led by where the demand is within the Dorset area. Right, just see if there's anybody else. I'll let you come in. Jane?
Sorry, if I could, I mean, I think when we first spoke about this, I think what has been displayed really by the work done by officers and by this exercise is that the flexibility of the team and looking where they're looking and why they're looking, and the fact that they can be flexible where that demand is. And I suppose as time goes by, we may establish gaps elsewhere. So we've got that flexibility in the system. And I think this shows that, because we were initially looking at and talking about 3 sites, whereas at the moment we're now just focusing on this one. Obviously we have the pilot site. So I think that there's that area for flexibility which has been displayed, which I'm really pleased to be able to see.
Thank you very much for that clarity, Jane. Appreciate it. Anybody else in the chamber? Mark Roberts.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Mark Roberts. Congratulate you on this report. The reablement should assist greatly with the correct discharge and the prevent premature discharge, which we know is quite a problem. My question was for sort of clarification on, as Care Dorset are staffing, there will be procedures that people in reablement will need that are not able to be provided by care staff. They are medical procedures. Are we going to work in partnership with the hospital, because there is a distinct shortage of district nurses and doctors able to do visits? So I wonder if that is already under discussion, that the hospital will provide the medical services for the patients in the reablement unit. Thank you.
Thank Thank you for your question, Mark. I think, Jane, you're going to reply, Jane?
I think John is going to answer that, but it's about being the medically fit and how that works with the NHS.
Yeah, it's a good question. So yes, people will have to be medically fit to be discharged to this site. But given its proximity to the hospital, that gives us a really strong partnership in making sure that any future medical needs or any relapses in the conditions can be managed on site. But there is a point that's sort of wider than this. So the initial pilots through Care Dorset have seen us work very closely with our colleagues in health, and there's been a lot of support sort of around enhanced models of care and medical support for that first site that we have open at the moment in Blandford. So it's a good partnership. It's an evolving one, and this is quite new. And I think we'll work together to make it the best that we possibly can. But so far, we've had some excellent support.
Thank you, John. John Andrews.
Thank you very much, Spencer. I'm just wondering, this enablement centre will be in Dorchester, obviously, because the demand is key from Dorchester. Will people from Yeovil Hospital be going to the Dorchester centre as well, or are you looking at a centre up in the northwest of the county? Similarly, with the northeast of the county, a lot of people go to Salisbury Hospital. Just wondering if they'll come into these centres as well.
Hello, thank you. Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, they will be coming from those hospitals, but bear in mind this is for Dorset Council residents only. So obviously they do get serviced and they have procedures not just in Dorset Council. So it's from all the hospitals, but they must be Dorset Council residents.
Thank you, Jane. Right. Cabinet colleagues. Gary.
Thank you. I think we should remember this is part of a greater scheme, and that this is the first build. I don't think we could possibly have hoped for a better location than next to a hospital. Working in partnership with NHS is absolutely perfect. This is all about location, location, location. It's particularly for Paul, but that is the reason. And there will be at least two others, we hope, and it'll be interesting to see where they are and how they fit within the Dorset area. Thanks.
Thank you, Gary. Cabinet colleagues, anyone else? Laura Beddow.
Thank you, well done, Leader. I just wanted to recognise really the dexterity, I suppose, that the team have displayed in reacting to changing markets, changing pressures, and actually to maybe recognise the speed at which local government and health partners in this instance have worked together to produce something, a plan that's actually really tangible and really reacts to the pressures very quickly, because that's not always the case in health and local government. Sometimes things feel like they can take an awfully long time and events and pressures have moved on. But that's not the case here. And I just wanted to take a moment to really say well done, because I think it's a great piece of work that really recognises what our residents need and seeks to provide it. And we should be really proud of that. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Laura. Any other? Ray Bryan.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I've got to say from the outset, a fabulous report and a real step in the right direction that this council is taking, something I'm very, very proud of. A couple of points I would like some clarification on is what contribution is the NHS making towards us in helping them out of their difficulties? And secondly, if I may, it's probably one for Gary or Aidan. I see the loan interest is at 5.47%. Is that ring-fenced or variable? Because obviously with the movement in interest rates, this could affect some of the numbers quite dramatically one way or the other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Who's going to answer that? Oh, bit of a conflab going on up there.
Thank you. It's NHS land, and there is a £3 million, correct, contract in place at the moment. So they're supplying the land, which is significant, clearly, and that contract. And did you want to add to anything to that? I think that's probably, yeah. I mean, I think what we're finding in adults is, working incredibly well with the NHS partners on these centres and in other areas. So the more projects that move forward, it's another step in having a very fruitful working relationship with them, and they're very open and they're very enthusiastic about all of these issues, and a real commitment to be working with us to make these. Obviously, it benefits them as well, but we will win, and especially our residents.
Thank you very much, Shane. Who did I see? Andrew.
Thank you. I appreciate it's always been seen as the holy grail, how we could remove the silo mentalities that existed and work in a collaborative way with external partners. And this is a very bold example of how we can deliver that between health and social care. I think many of us would want to seek a reassurance around our own responsibilities within that, so that we aren't stepping on each other's toes, but actually complementing each other's work. And the other one is to understand, I'm a great believer in input from those sort of voluntary organisations. I think of the likes of the work of the BSO, for example, and music therapy workshops in our care homes, and whether we will see that sort of work also appearing in our reablement properties.
Right, thank you, Andrew. I saw Aidan online. Aidan, do you want to comment? Sorry, I missed you earlier.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Spencer. Good morning. Aidan Dunn, Executive Director for Corporate Development and Chief Finance Officer. So the question was on loan interest and currently modelled at 5.5%. When the project is given the go-ahead and we draw the funding down, it's likely that we'll take the money or borrow the money from the Public Works Loans Board. So at that point, the interest rate will be fixed. So the issue of variability is between now and drawdown, as opposed to during the life of the project. But that's sort of will be tied into the return to Cabinet before the final sign-off of sort of the next stage of the project. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Aidan. It's really helpful. Right. Any other members of the Cabinet wish to comment? Okay. Does I would just say, before I come to the final part, I think this is a great example of working together in health and care. And it will be something that we've been passionate about in terms of the advent of the ICS and all the work that's gone around that. And we're starting to see some real tangible outcomes as a result of all the work that's been going on. A lot of it behind the scenes, but great example. So well done. So does any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you very much. And move on now to agenda item 10, a devolution deal for Dorset. I hand over to Councillor Simon Gibson.
Good morning. Councillor Simon Gibson, portfolio holder for economic growth and levelling up. I'm delighted to be able to present my first paper to Cabinet on a topic that has the potential to deliver significant investment into Dorset and empower local decision-making. The leader has been consistently calling for a better deal for Dorset from government. A devolution deal would allow Dorset Council to work with the government and with neighbouring authorities to secure additional funding and keep pace with those authorities that have successfully secured a good deal for their area. I believe that this is an exciting opportunity to explore what any deal for Dorset would look like, and this paper seeks a mandate from Cabinet for the leader and I to begin formal discussions with government and with neighbours. At Dorset Council, we have taken a collaborative approach in many areas. Choosing to work with our neighbouring local authorities and partners across Dorset, this is an opportunity to build on that collaborative approach and secure a deal that is good for Dorset Council and good for Dorset residents. The report recommends that further work is done to develop a devolution deal, At the start of this year, devolution deals had been agreed by government with 14 areas. Most devolution deals have included the establishment of a mayoral combined authority. However, 3 deals have been accepted with a single local authority in Cornwall, Norfolk and Suffolk. A deal in the East Midlands is being based on a new legal structure with a Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, together bringing together a number of existing county and unitary authorities. On its own, Dorset Council does not have a sufficient population to meet the government's threshold of 500,000, so we would need to partner with one or more neighbouring councils to secure a deal. In order to secure a deal, it is necessary to have a governance structure in place which accords with the government's devolution framework. This is set out in Appendix in the report. It is known that the mayoral model is one which is favoured by government, and for this reason brings the greatest extent of devolved powers and resources. However, we know that this model is not one which would necessarily find support in our community, and it is for this reason that I am recommending that any further work on a devolution deal for Dorset should be built on the sound governance which has been secured through the creation of Dorset Council, working in collaboration with one or more neighbouring councils. With many other areas already setting out their intentions to secure a devolution deal, we must not risk being left behind. We will be in a much stronger position to secure a good deal by being proactive. I wish to reiterate that this paper seeks a mandate to secure a devolution deal and does not seek to set out the specifics of what a deal would contain at this stage. However, should Cabinet be minded to support the report, the next steps would be to signal our intent to government and secure their support and assistance to develop a fuller understanding of the impact and the opportunities available to Dorset as a result of any deal. I am pleased to recommend the report brought in my name to Cabinet, and I am thrilled and relieved to welcome John Selgren and Jonathan Mayer, the report's authors, to assist with any technical questions colleagues might have.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm happy to second this report. I've said for a long time in council, when I talked in my leaders' announcements about it wouldn't be good to get a deal for a county deal for Dorset. And as you say, we're not big enough to do it on our own. So it's been around a while, and also it sits in the cabinet commitments, the 10 commitments that we set out well over a year ago, and many of the things we hear today, both in this cabinet and also in other venues, how those commitments are beginning to come through as tangible outcomes. And this is one of those. And the opportunities, I was at the LJ conference a week or so ago, and I spoke to a number of colleagues around the country who've had experience of going for a county deal or devolution, and the opportunities are huge. And the opportunities are so huge, it's not something that Dorset can ignore. It would be to the detriment of the people of Dorset if we did so. So I'm very, very happy to second this. And also, Michael Gove quite recently, in fact, at the conference, made a point that he recognised that the mayoral model for devolution didn't always work in every area. In fact, if there was not an appetite for a mayoral model, it was quite acceptable for and it sits in the legislation anyway, for an alternative model to be created and approved by government, so it allows us an area to still have a devolution deal. So I'm optimistic about this, and I think it does give a huge opportunity. I've seconded it. I've spoken long enough. I'm going to open it up to the floor, and I know Brian Heatley is already indicating. Brian.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Brian Heatley from Rodwell and Wyke in Weymouth. A couple of comments and then a question. First of all, it's absolutely right we do this with BCP. It doesn't make any other sense, really. Equally, I hope you will be pressing the things which we see as major priorities for this council: the environment, public transport and buses and housing. That's where I think the opportunities may arise. I was going to ask you 2 questions, but you've set my mind at rest on one of them, which is your attitude to a mayoral authority. The paper was, how shall I put it, a bit unforthcoming about what you thought about just some formalised arrangement between the councils and having a directly elected mayor. But I was very glad to hear what you and Councillor Gibson said that suggests you are not looking at that. The question, and it's a cheeky question, and I have to ask it tactfully, but are you sure you've got your timing right? We are at a certain stage in the parliamentary cycle. Next year, the world may change. You may either find that you've wound up with a deal which quickly begins to look rather outmoded, or you might find that you've spent a lot of time trying to get a deal, but you didn't get over the line in time and have wasted a lot of time. You know, if we'd started 2 years earlier, fine, but I'm a bit doubtful about what's starting now.
Simon?
Thank you very much, and thank you, Brian, for the question. Just to add some further reassurance around issues that we both care about, for example, climate change, I see this as a really good vehicle to get additional funding in for priorities that, I mean, we've made that a priority as a council, and what a devolution deal ought to secure is additional funding for the priorities that we've already set. So that would include climate change. On the timing, I think this is the difficult one. There's never perfect timing. There's different cycles, some of them nationally set by government, some of them set by local elections. Perhaps had we sought a devolution deal in years before and there was changes in partners, you know, that might have affected how a deal would go. My experience is that there's probably very little value in waiting to see what comes next. But I think one thing that is clear is that devolution is relatively certain to continue in the long term. I'm not sensing any major disagreement in the main political parties around the principles behind devolution. And I would suggest that actually having a good deal, as advanced as we can get it, is probably the best way for us to be able to proceed regardless of what might happen elsewhere in Westminster.
Right, I've got a few colleagues who want to ask questions. I've got Mark Roberts, Paul Kimber and Shane Bartlett. So, Mark.
Thank you, Leader. I'm not sure whether it's for the portfolio holder or the Leader, my question. We've talked about it not necessarily needing to be a mayoralty in the area. Has the government or the Minister indicated what sort of governance is preferred by the Ministry or the government for successful devolution to be granted?
I refer to Simon.
Thanks, Mark. The answer is no, they haven't. In the report, it says something which I think is reasonably important, which is that every devolution deal is bespoke. There is unique elements to every deal. And what is becoming clear, that whilst there are molds that devolution deals are typically taking, the government is also evolving how they are dealing with local councils to better reflect local circumstances. And it's one of the reasons why we've been relatively unclear in the report about what we would be seeking in terms of things like the governance structure that would come forward. One thing I think that is clear, and perhaps it is worth stating at this stage, is I do think it is going to require some strong governance models to be able to provide that reassurance that a directly elected mayor may not, that would provide. So if we're not going for a directly elected mayor, I think we will need to be able to satisfy the government that clear, strong decision-making is in place, which we have at Dorset Council, but we need to make sure that any deal with partners would continue to reflect that.
Thank you very much, Simon. Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair. Paul Kimber, Portland. Thank you for the report, and I absolutely welcome it. And the commitment to working with Somerset, I think, is absolutely on the right lines. They've got a lot to offer. We've got a lot to offer, and there is a lot of integration between Somerset and Dorset already within railways and transport. I haven't really got a question, but just a couple of points. I've always stood by the need for quality jobs, and both the Leader of the Council and myself are always, if you like, pushing for good apprenticeships. And so if you can give us a quick, you know, if you're happy to support that area of work as this creates a life of its own. I think turning to the elections next year, I mean, it was that American politician that said it's the economy, stupid, and I think this is going to really follow, if you like, that need for getting our economy up and running with quality jobs. Thank you. That's my point.
Pick up on Paul's comment about Somerset. I mean, you could pick all sorts of counties that are immediate vicinity of Dorset. And I think one of the aspirations we've got beyond this morning, assuming colleagues support the recommendations, is to empower Simon and I to start talking to neighbouring upper tier authorities about what size we can create, because there is, in government's eyes, size does have is a factor. Scale is a factor in terms of these sort of deals. So we're going to keep the door open. That's why we didn't put specifically in the report that we would go and partner with one council. There may be opportunities, and we need to explore that, to partner up with more than one other council to make the deal attractive to government, particularly if we go for the strong leader model rather than the mayoral model, which clearly I don't see any appetite for in this meeting. So I think Paul's comment's valid, but it's a bigger picture than just that one area, Paul. Do you want to add anything, Simon? No? Right. Shane Bartlett.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to give a correction that I feel a correction in the report, which is a really good report. And I've got two questions. So at page 68, 1.36, it talks about the new unitary council, Dorset Council in 2019, a positive decision to adopt the leader cabinet model of local government. I don't think that's quite right, because when I sat in the joint committee with you, Chairman, the structural change order that come down, and that what was laid out in that was that the new Dorset Council will be a leader cabinet model. So I don't think that was quite right. We've had time to change it. Now, what I would concede is that Westminster want to deal with a cabinet structure, local government, and I think that's been borne out with the amount of times that yourself and your portfolio holders have had those direct conversations with MPs and senior civil servants. So I think that, yes, government want to deal with a cabinet structure, and we have to dance to their tune, but I don't think that's quite laid out right in the report, albeit an excellent report. If I can move to my first two questions. The first one is sensitive, but as with my scrutiny head on, you'd expect that from me. And it's that logic would suggest that a pan-Dorset devolution deal would be the right approach. However, BCP Council could not be described as being in a healthy position, particularly regarding finances, as with many local government authorities across the country. And also, they are not as advanced as we are with their transformation programme. Therefore, how much risk would there be to Dorset Council and its residents if a pan-Dorset approved was taken, a pan-Dorset approach was taken, and how realistic is a devolution deal with one or more of the other neighbouring authorities? As we see in the report, some of them are actually progressed along the line anyway. And as you know, I'm a keen advocate, to use one of your words, of a southwest area strategic approach. I've got another question after that, Chairman, please.
I think the simple, I mean, somebody might want to come in behind me, but the simple answer is if you go into a Devo deal, the councils involved in it still remain sovereign bodies. Therefore, they're still responsible for their own finances and so on. It's a collective around some of the, I believe I'm right in saying it's a conduit to enable us to bring funding that we wouldn't otherwise get into Dorset to do with a whole range of different stuff. And there's stuff in the report, and Brian touched on environment, and it's in there, and buses, it's in there. There's all sorts of other things that we wouldn't otherwise get funding for, but we remain sovereign bodies. So whilst there was a comment made about individual financial positions of other councils that may or may not be involved in a Devo deal, it isn't going to be a deal breaker in that context. Okay, everybody else got to add anything to that, Simon?
Thanks, Leader. I mean, I think that's right. And what we would seek to get out of a deal is still very much up for debate. In many ways, the mandate allows us a fairly open hand at this stage to go and see what's possible. We will need to go and speak to our neighbouring councils and actually find out what their appetite is. We will find more about their positions and what's possible through that discovery phase. In the appendix, it sets out sets out some of the three criteria that the government has typically used to try and determine what level of deal you get. They call them the three tiers. And in it, you'll see, tier one is a much more loose arrangement, with neighbours, whereas versus Tier 3, which is a very, very strong agreement with neighbours, which typically at this stage does include an elected mayor. And I think what the leader and I would look to do straight away is find out what the appetite, both from this council and with our neighbours, is before we bring anything that has anything specific back to councillors. And at that point, hopefully, we'll be able to provide much greater reassurance about what the impact that would have, not just on our services, but on our decision-making here at Dorset Council.
Second question.
Chairman. The second one was, it was just basically, there's on page 67 at 1.32, there's a phrase that says Dorset has a strong economic geography. And I wonder if there's some flesh on the bones as to what exactly meant by that, because I've got my own views on that, and it probably doesn't accord with some other people's in the room.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just clarify, it's one of the terms that's used by the government explicitly in relation to devolution to understand the concept of an economic geography on an area that has, where the economy itself is sufficiently integrated, that the economic impact across that area would be consistent. So it's just, I say it's the adoption in that section of the report of a specific phrase used by government very consciously. I think the portfolio holder wanted that in the report to reflect the fact that actually we should be saying to government loud and clear that actually Dorset would meet the economic test of a functioning economic geography. I hope that clarifies the point, Chairman.
Right, thank you very much. Anyone else before I open up to the Cabinet? Right, Cabinet colleagues. Byron.
Thank you, Leader. And just speaking to the report, clearly I take the high level that this report is pitched at, so I wouldn't want to fine-tune things at this stage. And I'm supportive of this. But I'm conscious, Leader, and you have touched on this, so please forgive me. We all know the government, no matter what government or what colour, is always, their main drive is critical mass. That's how they do it, more bang for their buck. They say it 1,000 times, and that's not going to change in the future. Hopefully there's no change in the future, of course. But this also speaks to ambition, and my point is around ambition. If the government took its policies done on ambition, Dorset Council would absolutely be at the top of that list. And we've seen that by some of the things that we've been awarded recently, particularly in Councillor Bryan's portfolio, that Dorset Council bats well above its weight. And it's unfortunate that the government doesn't note that in ambition. But this speaks on critical mass. And absolutely we should be supporting this. I just would press, and I'm sure this is the case, that when we do look at other authorities, that they have the same ambition that Dorset Council has, and that is important. Thank you, Chairman.
Want to come back, Simon?
Thanks, Brian. Completely agree. I think a theme running through my opening remarks was whatever we secure needs to be a good deal for Dorset. A good deal for Dorset is likely to be a good deal for our partners, whoever they may be. But I think we are trusted, I hope, in government to deliver on what we say we'll deliver on. We've secured lots of funding from government for various projects across the council, and we've delivered them well. And I would see devolution as the next step on that. I do think us taking the lead on this perhaps gives us a strong position to shape what happens next. But I agree, this is a once-in-a-generation chance to be ambitious, and whatever we do set out to do through a deal needs to deliver genuine change.
You just touched on it. Dorset Council taken the lead. We have taken the lead. I've taken it upon myself to speak to others who've like-minded, and we need to get in that room now beyond today, assuming we get the approval, for you and I to develop those conversations, do what absolutely others have said, test the appetite, see what the ambitions are, and then try and pull something together that we'll bring back on a further occasion. Jill.
Thank you, Leader. Sort of following up on both of those last conversations, we have done incredibly well as a council, a new council in the 4.5 years we've done so far. Our transformation has been amazing, made big savings and a big difference to this council. And we have got a huge amount of cred, not just in Ray's area, but in a number of areas, the way our children's services have changed,
In digital in particular, we're considered one of the front runners. And I think that this is just another form of transformation that we must go for with a really strong ambition, because this really will then drive that process for us to be something rather special as a council and support our ambition to do the sort of things that we've got in our commitments for the people of Dorset. So I think it's essential that we look into this and thoroughly support the paper.
Thank you, Jill. Any other Cabinet colleague? Ray Bryan.
Yes, thank you. I believe our potential for success is down to us having a track record of delivering, and a good example is our delivery of the work on the decarb project, where we received the odd 19 million, which was one of the largest awarded to any council. This was achieved within budget, despite the inflationary pressures. We had to make some changes, but we delivered. Highways, for instance, which is my portfolio, should have mentioned that at the beginning, gets most of its money from the DFT. And again, it's because we have an exceptional track record of delivering. And every meeting I attend with DFT people, they're always very complimentary on the way Dorset Council's performs. It would be wrong of me to say this is down to certainly me as portfolio holder, but it is very much down to the great work that the officers do, and I think that should be registered, and it's because of their work we have the potential for this going forward. But I also should mention it's the great work from the cross-party support of the members, and I'd like to pay a compliment to both Overview and Scrutiny on the way they deal with things. I'm probably getting slightly off subject, but I think it's worthwhile noting that our success is down to teamwork, and long may that continue. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Ray. Gary.
Right, back to reality. This is the first step on a very long road. What we're trying to do here is attract money for things that we can't afford to do ourselves, individually as a unitary authority. By bringing in others, we get the critical mass to go to government and ask for funding to do certain things. But the trick is to get those other authorities to agree that the things you want to do are also the things that they want to do. So going back to what Brian's question is, which is an important question, will they do this, will they do that? We don't know until we enter into those negotiations. So right now, we know very little about what the priorities will be. We have our own. Will they be the other authorities? We don't yet know. But as a method of bringing significant funding that we would never be able to finance on our own, this is the best deal in town. And that's why we should be agreeing with this, and that's why we should be progressing forward. I don't think it matters, Brian, what timing is not an issue. It looks as if devolution is going to be whatever party is in control. That's what will be the game in town. I can't see it changing, and we should get on with it as soon as possible. But it will be all about negotiating what is best for all, not just the Dorset Council. We need to remember that. We are partnering with a number of other authorities. So that's yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Gary. Andrew Parry.
Thank you. I appreciate Dorset is often seen as a gateway to the southwest. Conversely, we are, of course, a gateway to the southeast. And the economic generation in the southeast is incredibly lucrative for the nation as a whole. But what I would want to put down as an early marker is that Dorset should be more than a thoroughfare to either the southwest or the southeast. We should actually be a defined location for high quality employment and a quality of life that people aspire to. And that is a value I would like to see shared with any partners that we have in this process.
Thank you, Andrew. Anyone else? If not, any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendation set in the report? In that case, in the absence of any disagreement, the recommendations are approved. Thank you very much, everybody, for your contributions, and particularly those not on the Cabinet. I thought they were very good questions this morning. Agenda item 11, library strategy. Laura Beddow.
Hi, thank you, Councillor Laura Beddow, Cabinet Member for Culture and Communities. So this is brought to Cabinet for decision today. I'm really proud of this piece of work. So we've gone through an extensive two-phase consultation for our new library strategy. The report contains the library strategy, the operating model and the action plan, which are appendices 1, 9 and 10. We've listened to feedback, of which there has been a lot, and we now put forward a framework for how the library service is going to develop and deliver statutory services over the next 10 years. Crucially, it aligns with community need, what our communities have told us, and also our strategic priorities. And this is the really critical bit. The operating model that we're proposing today recommends retention of our network of all 23 Dorset Council managed libraries. We received over 12,500 consultation responses, 29 engagement workshops, and a 5% response rate from non-library users, which I was horrified by, but Department for Culture, Media and Sport has actually advised us is a really high percentage for that kind of survey for people that don't actually use the service. So I stand corrected. We've also got very high levels of support for the proposals in the strategy. Over 91% of people responding agree with our mission, which is to inspire, connect and enable our communities through our services. And over 81% agree with our proposed model and the core library services offer. So this really reflects the feedback that we've had. We've got 4 recommendations that the library strategy, operating model and action plan be endorsed and adopted, that the operating model be implemented from 2024 by library service, following consultation with the workforce and engagement with communities, that the consultation and engagement undertaken with our communities involving residents, children, communities, partners, businesses, councillors, workforce and all council services is noted, and that the findings and proposals contained within the Equalities Impact Assessment is also noted. Just like to add that this has been to Joint Overview Committee several times, and it is a really, really positive piece of work. There is also an element of ongoing conversation with our workforce, with our communities, as we progress through the implementation of this point of view. And finally, Liz Crocker kicked off this piece of work, ably taken over by Kate Turner and also ably managed by Lisa Cotton. And I cannot think of 3 better people to do it. They've done a cracking job and I commend it to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Have a seconder, please. David Walsh, thank you very much. Non-Cabinet colleagues, I think Shane, did you indicate?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Excellent report, massive consultation piece, and I think it just showed what can be done within local government authority and engaging with the public and with officers, and I thought it was a really good piece of work. I had concerns around it, as the portfolio holder knows, with some of the stuff that was in the report pertaining to my own ward area, Wimborne Minster. And I'm very grateful to Councillor Beddow for meeting with me and officers and giving me an assurance that if things change significantly within an area, then the library status can be tweaked. As the Councillor Beddow now knows, there's about somewhere between 500 and 600 houses going to be built, not in Wimborne, not even in Dorset Council. It's just over the border, but there will no doubt you'd be using Wimborne as their hub town. So I am extremely grateful to Councillor Beddow and her officers for meeting with me and giving me that assurance and putting my mind at rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Shane. Paul Kimber.
Thank you, Chair, fellow councillors. I want to particularly thank Councillor Laura Mera, portfolio holder, for the work she's done. I know we met one wet morning at 8 o'clock with everybody from County Hall that you could imagine, and to really get up our local library at Portland really up and running. And I thank you for, particularly on behalf of our community, for all the work that's gone in on this. And I look forward to the strategy. One of the parts of the strategy I really enjoyed was seeing how you prioritised on children as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think you've set the emergency services off now. Right. Brian, sit and sit.
Thank you, Leader. I love libraries. I particularly loved the comment in here that said many children suggested using small, medium and large to distinguish between library types. We could set a trend by naming things by a description that tells you what they are for a change. Can we consider it seriously?
I don't know what to say. You've made me speechless, Paul. Brian. Laura, do you want to come back?
That's a great idea. Small, medium, and large. We did actually run our proposed hub, and through our consultation process. Most people thought it was quite a decent, plain way of explaining it. Some of the kids came back with Tidgy Library, Gymongous Library, Universe of Books, which I think if we can find a tiny bit extra in the budget, I really want to put in the children's sections. I know we can't really use Humongous Library or Gymongous Library as our headlines, but I really would quite like to put them in the children's section, and also apologise to the manager of Wareham Library because my small 2-year-old nephew tried to steal a fluffy penguin from it yesterday. Such was his enthusiasm for attending Auntie Laura's libraries. So I think plain speak, good, and I will try and get those into the kids' sections.
Thank you, Brian, I think. Right. Anybody else? Cabinet. It's been proposed and seconded. Any member of the Cabinet disagree with the recommendations? In that case, in the absence of disagreement, the recommendations are approved. What I would just say before I move on to the next item, this demonstrates yet again what strong cross-party involvement in policy making can bring forward. I'll leave you with that thought in your mind. Agenda item 12, Dorset Council Plan Priorities. I'm going to hand over to Jane Somper.
Thank you, Leader. And thank you for giving me the opportunity again to talk about some of the priorities. And Dorset Council Plan sets out priorities for 2022 to 2024, reflecting what is important to the administration and to especially to the residents of Dorset. And within this plan and the associated delivery plan, housing and creating stronger and healthier communities are two Cabinet commitments. It is important that Dorset Council continues to monitor and report on its progress against these priorities, and this report outlines the strong process that is being made in housing, and also reflects the considerable challenges as well as the opportunities that exist. Access to good quality housing is the foundation upon which people can build happy and successful lives. We're developing a new and ambitious housing strategy for Dorset to provide an overarching plan to guide the Council and our partners in tackling the major housing challenges facing the residents of Dorset. This is no easy challenge. The housing strategy is entering the formal consultation stage. I think it began yesterday. This has included really positive and constructive discussions at the People and Health Overview Committee, and wide engagement and interest, a great deal of interest from members. This is due to come to Cabinet in December for consideration and for approval. Prior to that meeting, there will be a further paper to Cabinet in September to consider the current delivery plan for housing and how we are to respond in the most effective and efficient way to the rising demand, the rising costs, and the declining availability of private rented housing. This will also show details of the new housing board to support the delivery of our objectives. Again, these are all challenging issues. Some of these challenges include the rise in demand for social and affordable housing. 2023 is being sustained in the first quarter to 23-24. In the financial year 22-23, we had 3,996 households approach us as being homeless or at risk of homelessness. This is 600 more than the previous year, and we are receiving up to 400 new applicants per month for the housing register, with a range of needs being presented, as well as homelessness. Currently, we have 369 households in temporary accommodation, of which there were 113 in bed and breakfast. The fact the overall number is static is actually a testament to the very strong performance from the homelessness team in preventing this homelessness and moving people into settled housing. There is a regular flow of people moving into temporary accommodation and then moving on into settled housing, such as those offered through the registered provider housing associations. For example, a typical 10-bedroom hostel that we use has had 30 households move through the scheme in the past 2 years. Obviously, the cost of temporary accommodation and bed and breakfast continues to rise, with increases greater than inflation being common. The local housing allowance rate is frozen, so any increase in temporary accommodation charges take the rents further away from what can be recovered through housing benefit, and we are focusing on sourcing and managing more cost-effective temporary accommodation rather than the over-reliance and very expensive housing such as bed and breakfast, the cost of which is much higher than traditional forms of accommodation. We work well to enable and support the development of new affordable housing, with 664 new homes built in the last financial year, and this is higher than at any point during our time as a unitary council, and is delivered when the economic challenges are even greater. We also work to encourage the best use of the existing homes owned by housing associations and to work similarly with private landlord sector. This helps to close the gap between the demand for housing and the availability of affordable homes to rent. Part of our work is to ensure good housing standards across sectors, with a team in place to encourage best practice from landlords and to take enforcement action when necessary. This includes a current rise in awareness and concern about damp and mould, and our team with landlords to maintain the best conditions for tenants. We also work to bring empty homes back into use and have had strong success recently in Blandford, bringing back an empty home and converting it into six homes for 6 homeless people. We've made good use of capital resource and government grants, delivering a hostel acquisition, a programme of rough sleeper accommodation, empty homes acquisitions, and a programme to acquire temporary accommodation to use initially for Ukrainian and Afghan households. The work on the housing strategy is driven by the need for Dorset residents to live safely and securely in well-designed and well-built homes which meet their needs. The need to match the demand for housing to the supply of available homes is a key challenge, and the housing strategy is looking to find ways to increase the availability of housing across tenures, as well as to help people to explore options when they are facing homelessness or living in unsuitable housing. Our work also focuses on making sure that homes are maintained at a decent standard and be accessible. Our teams work to ensure that landlords and owners can deliver to that level. As a non-stockholding council, we are very clear that our role is as an enabling authority. It's a critically important one, and this strategy recognises the importance of collaborating with partners to deliver high quality, affordable and sustainable housing for our residents. This point also translates to other demands for housing or accommodation from across the council's area of need. Finally, a decent home is a strong foundation of a good life. If you live in a poor quality or overcrowded home, or can't afford to find the right place for you and your family, then life chances are significantly reduced. Within Dorset Council, we have a strong team who do great work in dealing with the challenges of the rising demands, rising rents, and lack of homes local people can afford. We are in a process of consulting on a new and ambitious housing strategy, and I'm looking forward to bringing this to Cabinet in December, having gathered the views from across our residents and interested parties. We're also going to be coming to Cabinet earlier in September to outline how we intend to face current and immediate challenges, working with partners and residents to provide housing solutions across the county. Thank you. I have Andrew.
Right. Thank you very much for that. It's very helpful. I would just add, before I open up, that I did actually write to Minister a few weeks ago about the frozen local housing allowance, because it has been frozen for quite some time, and therefore any council responsible for homelessness has to pick the tab up between what you get to cover the cost of B&B, which is quite expensive, and what it costs us. So there is a burden on us, and I've written to him, and I haven't had a reply, but I should pursue that beyond the meeting to make sure by the time we come back for the next Cabinet, we'll have had a response. But you never know. We can only try.
Thank you very much for that, and I'll be very interested to hear and understand the response. And there is a table in this paper that sets out the losses, the subsidy loss, and because of that frozen amount. I didn't go into the detail of it because it's quite technical, but it is there.
Graham Carr-Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'd like to congratulate Councillor Somper on delivering a great report. I fully acknowledge the support and support the work that's been done during the past 4 years, and actually I've been proud to have been a part of that as well. It's good to see cross-council support for the principles we are setting down about housing. As you said, a decent home is the basis of a good life. But we need all parts of this council and our partners to work together on this item. If we do not, and if we work in too siloed a way, we will run the risk of moving too slowly and not getting ahead of the considerable housing challenges facing the residents of Dorset. So I implore you to dovetail the great achievements and ambitions of the small but almost perfectly formed housing team by fitting them across the directorates. If you do that, Chair, we've got really good prospects for success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Graham, for your comments. Paul, and we'll move on.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and Paul Kimber, Portland. I really welcome this report, and I look forward to the report in September. That was a pretty horrific stat we had, that we're expecting 400 names coming forward for housing. I know I have to usually write once a week to Graham to say I've got this case, can you help? And he's pretty effective. I normally get some sort of reply and some sort of assistance. But I've always considered to be, for local authorities, housing is one of our key aims. I'll say that across this council and everybody else, and that is our key aim, to house our population. I mean, it's pretty horrendous, the price of new homes, and I think it's so difficult for young families to actually get started. And this is important if we find a way forward. I personally would want to bring back council housing, but I know that's going to be very, very difficult in our particular circumstances. But I know other councillors have said to me in this council, bring back council housing. But we've got to work with as someone said this morning, we've got to work with the tools we've got. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. You give me a hook to just refer briefly to the housing strategy that's coming to the 5th of September Cabinet. There's many strands in housing provision, And I wanted to get it all in one place so we could all appreciate what all the balances were, because a number of them are interactive with each other. It isn't just the homeless, it's getting young people in Dorset the right housing so they can stay, work, live, bring a family up in the county. So watch this space. I think the 5th of September will recognise it. A lot of good work's been done. Graham touched on it earlier in the short life of this council. And we've done a lot of work around the housing aspects and with our registered providers, and some of the changes in the numbers of houses that have been provided. I mean, the last number, 664, was better than the year before, it was better than the year before. So the trend is in the right way, but there's still a big hill to climb. So thank you for that, and thank you very much for your report, Jane. Moving on to agenda item 13, portfolio holder reports. Many reports in. Thank you very much, colleagues. They will be published with the minutes online. So take the opportunity to have a look. It gives you a bit of an insight into the work that goes on by Cabinet colleagues beyond what you can see. There's an awful lot of stuff gets done on the margins. All right, agenda item 14, urgent items. There are no urgent items. Agenda item 15 is exempt business. And just for clarity, I will read out the appropriate wording from the legislation on this particular matter. That in accordance with section 100A, brackets 4 of the Local Government Act 1972, to exclude the public from meetings for business specified in items 16 to 18, because it is likely that if a member of the public were present, there would be disclosures to them exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 3 of Part 1 of the Schedule 12 of the Act, and the public interest in withholding the information outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information to the public. So therefore, I'll ask the public, there aren't any in the gallery, but I'll ask colleague officers to now take us offline, please, so we can deal with the exempt business. Can I have a proposer for the exempt business, please? Ray Bright.